Please stand for the reading of the Word of God. Okay. For since the law has but a shadow of good things to come, instead of the true form of these realities, it can never, by the same sacrifices that are continually offered every year, make perfect those who draw near. Otherwise, would they not have ceased to be offered? Since the worshippers have once been cleansed, would no longer have any consciousness of sins. But in these sacrifices, there is a reminder of sins every year. For it is impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sins. Consequently, when Christ came into the world, he said, "Sacrifices and offerings you have not desired, but a body that you prepared for me, but a body you prepared for me. In burnt offerings and sin offerings you have taken no pleasure." Then I said, "Behold, I have come to do your will, O God. It is written of me in the scroll of the book." When he said above, "You have neither desired nor taken pleasure in sacrifices and burnt offerings and burnt offerings and sin offerings, these are offered according to the law." Then he added, "Behold, I have come to do your will." He does away with the first in order to establish the second. And by that will we have been sanctified through the offering of the body of Jesus Christ once and for all. This is the word of the Lord.
Morning, everybody. Will you pray with me? Father, as we sit here, your word in front of us, God, we really want to see the things that you would have us see. We want to be attentive. God, we want to hear the messages that you have for us to hear. And God, I ask that you would encourage us with these things, that you would give us boldness. God, that you would, that because of what we go over today, that we would be more apt to draw near to you, to stand firm in the face of attacks from the enemy, that we would persevere even when we fall, and that most of all, we would be clinging to Jesus above all things, and that we would find in him everything that we need, no matter what the situation. God, let my words be effective. Let anything that's not from you fall to the floor. Cause our ears to hear. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen. One of my favorite things to do for fun is to play golf. I have done it since I was a kid. Would go with my dad. And it's one of the things that I connected with my wife over. When we met, she was a golfer and she liked to play golf. And so it's always been something I've really enjoyed doing just for fun. I don't get to do it very much, to be honest. But several months ago, I was playing with some friends, and they had invited me to a really nice golf course, and I, just very excited. Got midway through the holes. I don't remember what hole it was, maybe 11 or 12. And I took a really big swing, and I felt a kink in my neck. And that little kink was enough to kind of set me on this road for the next several months where I could not turn my neck one way or another. Like I was stuck pretty much. Cody remembers that time. It wasn't that long ago. And as it finally subsided in the fall of this year, I was like, I'm finally able to not feel this pain quite as much. And I doing this project at home, carrying something down from the stairs, and I take a step and I do something else to my back. And now I've got this other pain. Getting injured is no fun. Health problems are no fun. And there's something discouraging about feeling generally good about how things are going, how life is going, and then to be stymied by injury or some other health problem. I think that the reality is this happens in my spiritual life too, where I can be on just a good trajectory. My habits are really good. I'm memorizing the word. I'm praying every day. I'm reading my Bible. I'm even, being generous or kind to my neighbors when there's opportunities. I'm being bold in my faith, all those things. And then something happens. It's not always my fault. At least I tell myself it's not. Attacks can come from outside or from inside. Things in my own life, bad decisions that I make. And the problem with setbacks in spiritual growth is that it can make obedience really difficult in the small things. And I found that it can even create a little cycle in me. And the reality is I think that we're all kind of like that. We all have that. We can be on a good trajectory, learning new things, spiritual depth increasing, and then something happens. And instead of continuing to trust and depend on Jesus, instead of repenting and confessing our sin and trusting in Jesus freshly, we slip into an old addiction, or we speak a cruel and unnecessary word to a loved one, or we run to a comforting but very unhealthy escape. Our weakness and sinful history push us into disobedience, large and small, which consequently creates this cycle of fear, shame, frustration, and it just kind of cycles. And the reality is that this is very discouraging, right? I mean, discouragement, and when you're discouraged, obedience is hard. If nothing else, because the world pushes back when you try to get out of the cycle, to step back into obedience, following Jesus faithfully. Which I'm grateful, because God knows this about us. And that's why he gives us things like this. He gives us the book of Hebrews. He gives us his word so that we can have what we need to step back into it, to be encouraged. So this book, and we've mentioned this several times, but this book was written to a group of people who had given their lives to Jesus, and then it just seemed like everything fell apart. Persisting in holiness was hard. Meeting together exposed them to attacks. It says later in the book, it says that even their possessions were being plundered. So people were coming in and taking their stuff because they were being generous and kind to Christians. So this brought unique temptations to them, right? Like temptations to hide, and the temptation would be, well, I'm going to be a Christian. Nobody needs to know. I think Jesus is right, but I'm just going to Christian, but I'm not going to go to church. I'm not going to join with God's people. We'll be okay. Maybe in the future when things are safer, I'll go back out. Or the temptation to just abandon it altogether and say, really, could this be true if everything's falling apart? So much of Hebrews is focused on this reality, and it's written to people who are tempted to give up. And I think that's really important for us to think about because some of us, we're in situations where we've got health problems and it's hard to be obedient. It's hard to continue on just from mundane, small little pains, frustrations in life. And some of us, I think we might even feel like we're in a tornado. We're running from a tornado that's coming to get us. We're hiding, trying to stay sheltered in a place that's not going to shelter us. So Hebrews 10:22 through 25. This is not what we're preaching on today. This will be something that we'll talk about in a couple of weeks. But I think it's really important. If you want to go ahead and put that up, that's the first slide. Hebrews 10:22 through 25 is something that it is an exhortation that the author is making. And it's this exhortation that is being built up to with what we're reading today. Okay, so he's providing the grounds, the support to say, because of these things that we're talking about in this passage, do this. Okay? And so I just want to read what this says here, because I want you to think about this as we're going through this passage. Okay? Hebrews 10, 22 through 25. Let us draw near. Let us, that's an exhortation. That's a, hey, let's do this. Come on, let's do it. Let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, with our hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us, this is another, let's do this. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. Next one. And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. So the result of what we're talking about today is draw near to God. Hold fast your commitment to Jesus. Don't give up meeting together. Encourage each other. Keep going. So the passage we're looking at today, I think there are a few things that rise to the surface. And as I reflect on what is the point of this passage, and I think it's this. I think that the basic piece, and it's a piece that's been carried through in all of what we've talked about in Hebrews, is that Jesus is superior. He's the best. There is nothing better than him. And because he is superior, our lives should be characterized by being people who draw near to God. That's why it says, let us draw near to God. That's what our lives should look like if we're seeing that Jesus is superior here. We should have courage in the face of attacks, inside, outside, physical, spiritual, because Jesus is superior. We should have perseverance. Even when we fall, even when we stumble, we can get back up because Jesus is superior. So let's step into this passage. We're going to what I'd like to do is just walk down through kind of drawing in kind of what's happening here. It's a little bit confusing. It took me a while reading it several times before I understood what was being said. So I imagine, maybe you're more gifted in that than I, but I would love for us to just walk down through and let's take a look at what it's talking about. Okay, so this is verses 1 through 4. Hebrews 10. For since the law has but a shadow of the good things to come, instead of the true form of these realities, it can never, by the same sacrifices that are continually offered every year, make perfect those who draw near. Otherwise, would they not have ceased to be offered, since the worshipers, having once been cleansed, would no longer have any consciousness of sin? But in these sacrifices, there is a reminder of sin every year, for it is impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sins. Okay, so it says, for since the law has but a shadow of the good things. Okay, so he's referring to the Old Testament here. He's referring to the Old Testament law. And what's really fascinating about this time is that there is a reality that what you saw then was just a shadow of the reality. Okay? So I would call it like it's God ordained shadows. Okay? God even said in response to sin, these things need to happen. I mean, it talks about in Leviticus, it says, for the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it for you on the altar to make atonement for your souls. This is in Leviticus. This is in the Old Testament, for it is the blood that makes atonement for life. Leviticus 4, thus shall he do with the bull. He did with the bull of the sin offering, so shall he do with this. And the priest shall make atonement for them. So they're killing bulls, goats. They're making sacrifices to atone for sins. But what we're seeing here is that it's actually a shadow. And it's a God-ordained shadow commanded to do every year for sin. But what does it say? It says, for since the law has but a shadow of the good things to come instead of the true form of these realities. Okay, so those were shadows. But there is a true form. And it says, it can never, by the same sacrifices that are continually offered every year, make perfect those who draw near. So there's some, even though they did this year after year after year for the forgiveness of their sins, it actually did not fully deal with it. It was a shadow. There was some element of it that was pointing to something in the future. Just like you shine a light at something and you've got a shadow, you're looking at the shadows, but over here is actually the reality. If the shadows were the reality, then it says, otherwise, would they not have ceased to be offered? Okay, so if blood of bulls and goats had actually fully dealt with sin, what he's saying is that, then we should have just stopped offering it because it covered it. And yet, that's not what happened. They were required to do it every year because there's something else that it's doing. It's pointing forward to a reality. So there's an ordaining of shadows. Verse 3, but in these sacrifices, there is a reminder of sins every year. So that is what it does. It reminds us year after year, there's still sin, there's still sin, there's still sin. So this is setting us up for something different, something new, something that happened with Jesus that didn't happen with the law. Something else I notice here is that, as I look at these passages, I think that there's something that is different than maybe what we think about when we think about our problems in life. And I think that what's clear is that the real problem in life is sin and the fact that the answers that were there were inadequate. The answers that for dealing with sin were inadequate. And so God provided this remedy that was intentionally inadequate. When I think about a definition of sin, I think one of the most helpful definitions that I think about is a sin is any thought, word, or deed, right? So thought, word, action that breaks God's law by omission or commission. So omission is something that I was supposed to do, but I didn't do, right? By commission is saying, don't do that, but I did it. Does that make sense? Omission, commission, thought, word, deed. But I think one thing that doesn't exactly communicate is that the anchoring of sin is not simply in something that we've committed against another human being, but that the anchoring of sin, and it does, and that definition does have this, it's the breaking of God's law. But what's committed is not just against another human being, but it's something that's violating God's cosmic justice. Okay, the greatest being in the universe, the source of good and right and justice, all those things. That there is an overarching justice, and sin is the violation of that. And so it's actually much larger than just the breaking of rules that are rights and wrongs. I think one of my favorite authors puts a definition of sin like this. He said, what is sin? Sin is when the glory of God is not honored in the way that it should be. That would be a sin of omission. It's the holiness of God not reverenced the way that it should be. It's the greatness of God, not admired. It's ignored, focused on things around us. It's the power of God, not praised. It's the truth of God, not sought. It's the wisdom of God, not esteemed. It's the beauty of God, not treasured. It's the goodness of God, not savored. It's the faithfulness of God, not trusted. It's the commandments of God, not obeyed. The justice of God, not respected. The wrath of God, not feared. The grace of God, not cherished. The presence of God, not prized. The person of God, not loved. That reality, sin is a much deeper problem than we realize. And the answer of blood and goats is not enough to solve that. So second, moving on down through the passage. The good news is there's a plan. There's a solution to that. Verse 5, it says, consequently, when Christ came into the world, he said, sacrifices and offerings you have not desired, but a body have you prepared for me. In burnt offerings and sin offerings you have taken no pleasure. Then I said, behold, I have come to do your will, O God, as it is written of me in the scroll of the book. So this is a quote from Psalm 40. And the author's attributing to this being something that Christ spoke when he came into the world. It says, sacrifices and offerings you have not desired. So here it is, clearly. Sacrifices and offerings are not what God's looking for. But Jesus recognizes this, and he says, but a body have you prepared for me. What body? In burnt offerings and sin offerings, you have taken no pleasure. Then I said, this is Jesus speaking, behold, I have come to do your will, O God, as it is written of me in the scroll of the book. So there's a couple things that are striking to me in this. Number one, we're seeing this concept of the Son and the Father united to rescue God's people. Sacrifices and offerings aren't enough to deal with the sin. There had to be a better sacrifice, something that really dealt with it. And Jesus says, you don't want sacrifices and offerings. You've given me a body. And he says, behold, I've come to do your will, O God. This was a united plan. They're working together. This isn't a scenario where God does something, but he doesn't really want to. And, there's all kinds of analogies and things that I've heard over the years of where, it's almost like God's sacrificing Jesus, but doesn't really want to. This is a united plan. Jesus comes in full submission and sacrifice and unified and driven by the same mission of the Father to rescue God's people. It says, behold, I've come to do your will, O God, as it is written of me in the scroll of the book. Third, Jesus fully achieves the sanctification of his people through this sacrifice. So verses 8, let's keep going. When he said above, you have neither desired nor taken pleasure in sacrifices and offerings and burnt offerings and sin offerings. These are offered according to the law. Then he added, behold, I have come to do your will. He does away with the first in order to establish the second. And by that will, we have been sanctified through the offering of the body of Jesus Christ once for all. It was God's will to sanctify his people. Let me just talk a minute about this word sanctify. Because this is something really big that Jesus did in his death. So there's two words that I think are important for us to know. One is justification, and two is sanctification. Justification is the word that we use to describe what happens when God declares, like makes a declaration. It's like a legal declaration that says this person is righteous. It happens instantly. It's the moment that God declares it. It is so. It's 1 minute you're not, the next minute you are justified. It's the reality that in spite of your sin and brokenness, that God has declared you righteous, not on the basis of the things that you've done, but on the basis of Jesus' perfect death, his perfect life, death, resurrection. Okay? The second word is sanctification. Okay, so that's justification. Justification, a public declaration. The word is actually, like, if you look at the Greek word, it's righteousified, like to make righteous. That's how if you translate it directly, righteousified. But you'll see it all over the New Testament, justified. Okay, the next one is sanctified. So this sanctification is the process of being made more holy. Okay, it's like if one is like, boom, this is my child, you are mine. Sanctification is the process of growing in holiness, of becoming more and more like Jesus. Okay, so that's justification, sanctification. So when we read here, and by that will, we have been sanctified through the offering of the body of Jesus Christ once for all. He did not just buy your justification. He bought the end. He bought the progress of moving towards holiness, towards a life of perfection in the eyes of God. Again, this is another teaser because we will talk about this next week, I presume. There are some really startling things as we learn about God sanctifying those who are being sanctified. But this all happens in one sacrifice. Jesus' sacrifice, this permanent, perfect sacrifice that was a sacrifice once. It doesn't have to happen over and over and over and over and over again. It is a once sacrifice that bought your justification and it bought your sanctification. It bought everything all the way through. So here's how we get to the implications of this. Okay? As I think about the implications, if God has bought my justification and my sanctification, there is every reason for me to draw near to God without fear. Because the sin, all that list, holiness of God not reverenced, the power of God not praised, all this list, it's not just what happened before I was justified. It's everything that I'm doing on my way to being sanctified. All of that has been dealt with in the eyes of God. And so when you get to that passage later in Hebrews 10:22, and it says to draw near with confidence, we can do that. We can step forward. And what's the advantage of that? Why does that matter? And here's a couple of reasons why that matters. Number one, when God awakened your heart, when he did something fresh in you, everyone who's given their life to Jesus, this is what has happened in your life. When God awakened your heart, he arranged new taste buds. And so when it says draw near to God, do you know what happens when you draw near to God? You start going, oh man, that tastes good. I want more of that. Give me more. I want more of Jesus, more of God. That didn't happen until he woke you up. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that you have access. When it says draw near to God, you have access to someone with incredible power. Power to solve things that you don't know how to solve. You also have access to somebody who is wise beyond anything you can imagine. You have access to somebody you can trust in every way. Even when things aren't going like you think they might not, or you might not want them to go. You can trust him, and we draw near to God. Second, we can stand courageously in the face of attacks from the enemy. If all these things have been dealt with that we see right here, the sin, if God has dealt with those things, when those attacks come, we can stand courageously, and it calls us to stand firm. And remember, these people they're not just facing like, I don't know. There might be attacks related to body and physical ailments and things like that, but they're facing attacks where people are like literally taking their stuff and persecuting and hurting and things like that. But they can stand courageously because of the reality that this is their God. That Jesus has dealt with all the things that they have, and that there is an ending point in which God and all these people will stand before God with an answer. They can persist, they can keep going, they can stand firm because, number one, there's not anything better than this. And in fact, running away from it ends in something terrible, which will be dealt with for the people that stand opposed. Number three, if you fall, repent. Get back up, keep going. How does this help that? What makes us keep going? What makes us persevere? I think the biggest thing is that forgiveness is abundant in Jesus. There is a lot of forgiveness. And inevitably, you're justified, you're walking, your sanctification's out there, you're still making mistakes. But we don't just stay in a spot where we say, God forgives me anyway, I don't need to grow, whatever, I'll just keep going, doing whatever I want to do. No, there's an ending point, there's a goal, there's something that we're working towards. And not only is it a good thing, but it is a very happy thing. And so as you fall, you get back up and you keep walking, trusting in Jesus, eyes on the goal, looking at Jesus, chasing him, following him, knowing that that is a path of joy. That is where happiness is. It's not these other things that the world is telling me that maybe they think that's happy because they don't know this. Sanctification has been purchased along with your justification. The fourth implication that I think about as I get through these passages is simply this. It's cling to Jesus. This past week, I was watching a movie with my kids. Well, I guess it was a little bit with my wife, and then it was a little bit with my kids. Just kind of, anyway. Watching a movie. It's the movie Twisters, and it's the new version. Have you guys seen that one? I mean, there's the old version of Twister. This is Twisters, and there's a point in the movie. I mean, at the beginning, it just starts super intense, where, you know, if you haven't heard the story, I mean, they're trying to figure out a way to essentially like choke out a tornado by, you know, putting up this, you know, this water absorbing polymer up into the spout, and it, you know, makes the tornado dissolve or whatever. The beginning of the movie, it fails tragically, Several people die. They were seeking shelter and couldn't make it. But I began to think about this reality that sometimes we run to things that aren't made to protect us. They're pointers to other things. And I think the law was something that actually wasn't enough. It seemed like it could protect, but it wasn't enough. And then if you move on towards the end of the movie, and I'm sorry, spoiler alert, I began to see images of the fact that there are other images that sound a lot like Jesus to me. There's a point in the movie, there's a tornado coming, they get down into a pool and they're like hanging on to these pipes that are in the pool and just hanging on for dear life. And there's a character that's there. He's this guy who's like travels into tornadoes and shoots at fireworks and stuff like that. It's kind of funny, but they're down in the base of this pool. They're gripping a hold of these pipes, and you hear him saying, "I got you, I got you, I got you." I just thought about like hanging onto those pipes. Number one, Jesus is like those pipes. It's going down 5-6 feet into the ground. And you're clinging to Jesus, the safest place you can be. There's storms coming, there's hard things coming, and you're hanging on to Jesus. But he's also the voice in your ear saying, "I got you, I got you, I got you." And you're walking. Your eye in sanctification, you want to be there. It's not because you're just trying your hardest, but it's because Jesus got you. And as I think about the reality of being able to stand courageously in the face of attacks, I was thinking about, there's a point in the movie where there's a tornado, it's coming, it's about to destroy this town, and the main character gets in this truck, and this truck is outfitted with all kinds of stuff. It's got augers that drill down into the ground, and they've got all these like, these tubs with the polymer that goes up into the tornado or whatever, and she gets in the truck. She wants to rescue she wants to make sure that this town doesn't get crushed by this tornado. She gets in the truck. And she's driving out into this tornado. And as I thought about that, when we think about standing firm in the face of attacks from the enemy, Jesus is like that truck. It's a truck that you get in and you ride out into the face of the enemy, not because you're strong. It's because he is. You're driving out in the middle of that tornado. You're not afraid. Why? Because you're in that truck. You're driving out, drilling those augers into the ground. You're driving right into the middle of it. Because he is the truck. He's the strong man. He's the one holding you. He's the one protecting, guarding his bride. He's the one whispering, "I got you." That's how we respond to someone who came and rescued us, who said, "God, you don't desire sacrifices and offerings, but you've given me a body. Let's go get them." That's Jesus. Isn't he good? I mean, that guy, he's good, and he's strong, and he's somebody we can trust in, and he's somebody that we can cling to, and somebody that we can run towards, somebody we can depend on. There's no reason to give up. The forgiveness is there. The ending point has been determined. He's where we need to be. You fall down, you fail, get back up, cling to Jesus. Thank you for your forgiveness. I'm ready to keep going. Let's go. And keep moving towards him. What about you? Where does that hit you? What discouragements are you facing? You have sin that like you're really just struggling with today? just keeps coming back, are you tempted to say, I give up. I'm not doing it. What is God's message to you here? Cling to Jesus. Stand firm. Draw near to God with confidence. That's not a limitation for you. Those barriers have been, or the sin has been dealt with. Move towards God, not away from him. I think about what would happen if we really believe this. A lot of those verses, I'm just talking about letting us not give up meeting together. There's a reason for that. We need reminders. We need encouragement. We are weak. It's so easy. If we're just trying to go it alone, what's going to happen inevitably is that we're going to forget. We're going to get distracted. We're not going to remember the things that we need to remember. It's why we show up here on Sunday. It's because we're weak, not because we're strong. But Jesus is good. And we know it. And that's why we gather. It's not only when we love Jesus, but it is because we are weak and we need him that we come. And we need these reminders. And if we treated each other like that's what we were here to see happen, it's not just like a club. We're not just here to hang out, but we're here to really encourage one another. Let's get into each other's lives. Where are you struggling today? How can I pray for you? How can I encourage you today? Where do you need to freshly remember who Jesus is? One more thing I want to say is that I know a lot of what I've been saying today has been aimed at people who've given their life to Jesus, but maybe that's not you. Maybe you're hearing some of this stuff and you're like, man, I just don't know. And man, I'm just really glad you're here if that's you. Really glad. You're in a great spot. And I would encourage you to stay here until you get it straight. Keep coming. I also want to right now say that God is inviting you to lay down your life and give it to him. To trust fully in Jesus. So that he can say, when you say, Jesus, I give you my life. You're my Lord. I'm leaving my old life behind. It's about you now. God goes justified. You're his, and that sanctification mark has been set. If that's you, I would love to chat with you as we enter into communion here. I'll be over here. If you want to come chat with me, I'd be happy to do that, or find somebody who's regular here. I'm sure they would love to chat with you too. As we enter into communion this morning, I think communion does a couple things. Number one, it's a reminder of the reality that Jesus died for our sins, that he was a sacrifice. That's why we talk about his body being broken. We break bread just like his body was broken. That's why we have this red color juice or wine as a reminder that it was his blood that was spilled. This is a pointer to the gospel. It's a reminder of the gospel. The second element of this is that there, in a real way, and this is why we call it communion, that there's a real way that we meet with God in this moment. There is a very true spiritual reality that God is present here. And so as we come to the table, I want to invite you to take a few minutes to sit and reflect. And then when you're ready, you can come and take it to your seat, and we'll take it together. Hey, and also if you are not somebody who has given your life to Jesus, I just want to invite you. This meal would not mean anything to you. And to be clear, this meal is for sinners. We are all sinners. but it's also specifically for those who are God's people who have given their life to Jesus. And so if that's you, you're obviously invited to come, but if you have not given your life to Jesus, I would ask you to just stay seated, talk to God, ask him to reveal himself to you, reflect on the things that we said. We'll just take a few minutes, sit in your seats, and then whenever you're ready, you can